You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with Melissa Moon. Melissa is an ELAN healing facilitator and wellness coach dedicated to people who are ready to move forward in their life with clarity, beginning inside of their neurological system, assessing the vital energy that they need to make the real changes and to feel better in their body while doing it. Melissa is fascinated as to why our bodies do the things that they do. She is also fascinated on how we can influence that, what happens in our bodies and our experience in our lives. That simple curiosity has led her into learning and living what she loves, how to heal through body connection and prevention. She aspires to be efficient in healing others, wake up their body, wisdom, and innate intelligence. Yay, I did it. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really glad to have you here. I'm super excited. I've been waiting actually for this episode. The first thing we always ask our guests is to share a story of hope. And I honestly believe our stories of hope reach out like little heartbeats, touch people, and help create change in them. So I love our stories of hope. I think they're super powerful. Do you want to share yours today?
I have experienced a self-healing thing in my life. And that's what actually led me to the work that I share in my studio. And so the story goes is I was in my mid-20s and wanted to be a mom. And I made that happen. And amongst all the big transitions, so there was a big transition of leaving my ex-husband and making a life with a new partner and then getting pregnant, and the fantasy of what I envisioned wasn't actually what the reality was. So really stuck on this idea of fantasy. And when it all kind of came crumbling down amongst being a new mother, amongst feeling depression after the baby came, in a relationship that really wasn't serving either of us in regards to moving forward as a family, not having my own space to live in, like I was feeling it in a way that my body showed up with a physical manifestation. So I wasn't living my truth. I wasn't communicating things properly. I wasn't honoring what was actually happening in my life. And because of that, on a easy Tuesday afternoon, I lived with three other adults. I looked in the mirror, and mind you, I have a new child. They're around 6 months old. So like looking in the mirror every day is going to be like a regular occurrence. So I go down and I look, and I have this bump like on my neck, about 3 inches long and almost to the side, like almost to my jawline. And I was like, oh my God, where did that come from? Was my first question. And my second question was, I live with other people. Why didn't anybody tell me? And so I had this experience of a physical manifestation that was like, hey, if you are not going to pay attention to what is falling apart in your life, now we're going to give you something that you cannot not pay attention to. So I got to, for a good period of time, maybe almost a year and a half or so, of seeing this thing on my neck. And I'd gone to the doctor. I knew that it wasn't anything it wasn't like an emergency, right? And so I started on talk therapy, and I utilized some opportunities with a therapist to like really dive into our stuff, right? I was like, I'm good. Like, what stuff do I have? And it's like, oh my gosh, I have mommy issues. I have daddy issues. I have my own trust issues. I have fantasy issues. I have, reality of what life is like issues, and all these things that started to come to the surface. And I was like, wow, like getting this stuff in front of you is a big deal when we start putting words to how we're actually feeling and how life is showing up. And so my therapist, after about 3 or 4 months, she felt that I had enough skills of kind of dealing with all the stuff that was quote unquote wrong, that she pivoted me, and she's like, I want you to focus on what is right in your body. And it was like, okay, I've never been said, like no one's ever said that to me. Like, let's just focus on what's right with you in this moment. And so I was game because I did not want to, I knew there was more healing inside of myself than just making this thing go away. And so I ended up finding my practitioners and started working and doing ELAN, which is Extraordinary Living Advanced Neurology. So I was getting cortically connected in my body. I was reintroducing myself to myself. And during about a year's time of working somatically and letting things come up naturally and with ease and with grace and with safety and permission, this thing on my neck started to go away. And then over a period of time, it was flushed again. And it was like, oh my gosh, my body healed itself. And so I still went and had surgery. I had them come in and take it out and make sure that it was all cleaned up in there, make sure it wasn't cancer. And thankfully, it was just a salivary gland that filled up with blood. And my ENT was like, never seen that before. Don't even know why that would happen, especially in your age bracket and for what's going on. Is like, it was an anomaly. And it was just this beautiful experience of, wow, what happens when we continue to ignore big red flags in front of us? And then what actually starts to show up in our life that allows us not to not pay attention?
I agree
So
with this.
the hope is that healing.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, just the hope is that healing is possible.
I was going to say, I completely understand. Unless we walk out and we're hit by a car and we didn't see it coming, our body is so intuitive. When something's not right, we feel it in our gut. So we get that first intuition, like, I don't feel sick. I can't put my finger on it, but something just doesn't feel right. And so we ignore it because we really don't know what else to do. And then pretty soon it starts giving us symptoms, right? Maybe a little minor symptom. And you're like, wow, that's new. Like, what's going on? And we still ignore it because, we're not broken yet. And then the next symptom is like way worse, and we're starting to be broken, and we start paying attention. So I love how you started focusing on what was working in your body, like what was right, because our brains are so powerful that, like, if we start obsessing over something that my mom had breast cancer. She dies from breast cancer. Oh my God, what if I get breast cancer? And you worry, you're probably going to manifest breast cancer in your body.
Absolutely. Our mind is very powerful. I mean, there's everything from epigenetics, which is Dr. Bruce Lipton's, his study work of, it's not just genetics. It's such a small fraction of what actually influences what happens genetically. We can't just rely on like, oh, it's genetics. It's really environment and it's mindset. And same thing, psychoneuroimmunology is this, what is this doing that's reflecting what's going on in your body? Because your brain cells are not just up here. Your brain cells exist throughout your whole system and primarily in the gut. That's how we get these gut feelings. So it's really, really powerful. We are really good at like talking ourselves into symptoms sometimes. And it's an interesting experience.
I love it. I want to talk about how you're working, because I don't even know what ELAN healing is. Like, I've never actually heard of that before. And I know that you say it works with the neurological system. And I don't want people to feel like, don't say I caused my illness. That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying you have the power to make change. You have so much more power in your life to start creating a different, like, for instance, everyone who knows me knows I have no stomach. I have absolutely no stomach. I was given 2 weeks to survive after, 2 months in the hospital. And here I am 9 years later. My stomach did not grow back. I just, through mindset, literally, and hope, and trying to create a memory with my grandkids and not focusing on, I'm dying in a few days or a couple of weeks or whatever that looked like. And here I am thriving in that exact diagnosis.
I think it turns into a willingness. It's a willingness to be curious. And I don't think a lot of people have the power or the tools to feel empowered enough to ask really good questions and be willing to say, okay, this thing is happening. And why hasn't my body healed itself? What does this maybe relate to? When we start to ask better questions, we start to get a better experience of life. And, never to put blame on anybody for anything that's happening, but it's like, but if we can tell who are the fighters, and we can tell, like in your example of your story, like you had a willingness, like, I want to see my grandkids and I want to make memories with them. And I'm not going to let this thing take over my life in a way that's just going to take me down a lot faster than, I'm willing to let it happen.
I think that our brains do what we tell it, right? It really doesn't have, when they say I have a mind of my own or it has a mind of its own, it really doesn't. It's all the stuff we feed. It's kind of like when you say the computer keeps messing up. It's always user error because it's only what we're feeding it. It really doesn't have a mind of its own. Like we can trigger it to pick up certain things just like we do our brain. But if someone tells you you have 2 weeks to do this or you can't accomplish this, your brain hears that I can't or I only have, and it starts shutting down then. So when someone tells you you have 2 weeks to live or you have about 6 months before this happens, you watch yourself getting closer to that date and your body starts saying, wow, I should be getting ready for this, right? This is what they're telling me is going to happen. But what if we turn that around? And what if we start telling our body, well, it might, but what if it doesn't? I'm going to prepare for the what if it doesn't. And I'm not going to look at that date. I'm going to look at the right now. Like, this is what I want to do now, and start feeding your body that energy, like, and not having it prepare for your death or your failures or whatever that looks like. What if we're telling it a whole different story?
Yeah, and I think it really falls on this idea of the wellness to illness continuum. If you're familiar with that, it's absent of symptoms and disease. Like the illness to wellness continuum has to do with your mindset. It has to do with the willingness that you have to honor your own truth, your own body wisdom, and really the way and where you position yourself on the wellness to illness continuum is going to reflect your limbic system, which has to do with how you're processing your environment, your temperament, your mood, how you see the world. And it cascades into all these other beautiful things in our body, whether it's the viscera and the gut health, it's endocrine health, all that stuff. But it really just boils down to how willing you are to make it a good or a bad outcome.
I love that. I don't think though that because I started talking about something else, but I really want to know what ELAN healing is.
So ELAN healing comes as really gentle care. We are helping to retrain the nervous system so that you know what ease feels like in your body. And so I do that with gentle and light contact on the skin overlying the spine and the neck, and then down in the sacrum and the tailbone, because that's where the majority of like the parasympathetic nervous system comes out into the neurological tree, which is the spinal cord in the spinal column, right? So then you have the spinal cord, you have all the branches of the neurological system that are feeding all the organs. And so we want to work in the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic, fight or flight versus rest, digest, and heal. And these days, the sympathetic back in the day was great. Oh my gosh, there's a bear. Please run. It's not a time to digest your food. It's not a time to stop for a second and like ask the bear, like, what is this about? It's not a time for that. It's a time for all the blood being shunted shunted out of the viscera, going to the extremities, and you're getting out of there to survive that. And then ideally, once the threat is over, the sympathetic turn down, the parasympathetic come back up, and then you're back into rest, digest. Let's process this. Let's make sure all the food in my tummy is getting through my system. It's time to relax. It's time to be in a healing state. Unfortunately, these days, that bear has turned into what? Being on your device is too much. Your job that you might not like. The stress of being at home with children, sending kids to school, bills, traffic, all those things. And so many people are stuck in what we call sympathetic windup. It's like you're not getting off the merry-go-round. So, what happens? You're stressed out, you don't feel good, you don't want to go work out, your body doesn't even feel good enough, you're eating, not the best food and not making the most healthy congruent choices in your life. And so what starts to happen is that the shape, tone, and tension of your body starts to reflect the shape, tone, and tension of your life. So really, I'm coming in as the facilitator to show you where ease is. We're going to get connected in the body with breath, focus, and even some movement in these parts of ourselves, initiating a bit like a breath dissipated way through the spine. And so we're encouraging you to utilize your breath as movement through the body, bumping up into, we're energetic, right? Our body is energy, information is energy, emotion is energy in motion. So we're just being reconnected with it.
I'm kind of wondering, and I don't even know if I putting the connection together right. But do you think this is how one of the reasons maybe why we're having so many people now suffering with anxiety issues? They've never known how to balance that sympathetic, and like, it just makes me wonder. I've never seen anyone, a generation that have so much anxiety issues. Like, and I get it. Things are kind of crazy right now and like different, and we have no control over the things going on around us in our world, in our government, and with the health issues and going around. But I feel like every single person that reaches out to me is struggling with anxiety issues.
And I think that first like thing when we talk about that is that the majority of people don't know what it feels like to have body-centered safety. And so if you don't feel safe in your body, and if you're living just up here and there's nothing else happening, like I've had many conversations with people after they're in care for a little bit of time, they're like, oh my God, I have been ignored my body for 15 years. And it's like, whew, well, I'm glad that you're here and, get on the table, let's get connected. And so if you don't even know what that feels like, if you've never been encouraged to find yourself in that way, like I have small children and they get hurt, the first thing we do is we put our hands on our body when we know it's safe enough to be. We find breath there, we get connected there, and we honor what's actually happening. Wow, you felt that hurt. Yeah, that must have been scary. Instead of the old model of like, suck it up, you're fine, fuck up, quit crying, come on, let's go. And it's like, those are mechanisms that I've experienced as a child, but at the same time, it doesn't serve the body-centered safety. So it's like, yeah, I'm seeing multiple, if I could work with all the children, so we can like mitigate this issue for the long term, I mean, how much different could the world be? But it's like, people are having a hard time feeling safe in their body. And if you don't feel safe, I mean, anxiety is it's going to run rampant within you because there's no stopping it.
By the way, I think that you're absolutely right. I don't think enough people feel safe in their body. When they look super confident on the outside, there's complete disarray on the inside because they're having a lack of safety. But on the other hand, I feel like every time we swing the pendulum, it goes either like all the way this way or all the way that way. And there's never a balance, because I think there should be a balance with the bucket up. I really do, because there are certain things that, yes, we can teach you another way of nurturing through those things and recognizing them and seeing them. But sometimes you do have to bucket up because you don't have that moment to be able to do all of that.
100%, right? I mean, we're not living in a cotton fluffy fairy tale land all the time. Like, we're in the real world, and the real world needs sympathetics. We need to know that we can rely on ourselves to make the decisions we need to make. And there's a balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. There's a value in just being like, hey, I had a conversation with my husband today because I was feeling the grief. We were evacuated from our house last week. I just lost a friend to cancer. My friends just lost their homes in this fire. Like, there's a million other things that are going on, and I feel the grief. And it's those moments of like feeling it, and then also like being brave, and like understanding that the feelings and everything that's going to flow through us is important, and it's vital information. And sometimes we really need to nurture it. And sometimes just like, thank God I have good body skills to work it through, because the information is giving us energy. It's giving us fuel to move things forward. So yeah, there's absolutely a balance, and there's absolutely a place for all of that.
So, Melissa, one of my things is like, whatever I do in the world, I try to think about how can I make a generational impact. It's super important to me to, like, what I do today affects generations later in a positive way, or opens the doors for new things or experiences in a positive way. So I honestly, like, I went to learn NLP because I wanted to understand language, and I wanted my grandkids and my kids to have a better resource on what that sounds like, what that looks like, and how you receive it and how you put it back out into the world, because I think words are very powerful. But I think what you're doing, if we could really bring this into schools, start teaching kids, like, just think of the tool we give them, which will be generational, because what are they going to do? They're going to practice it, which is going to teach their kids, which will go on down the generations. And so I think that that's beautiful, because I came from a generation where you've got to just get a, by the way, I used to tell my kids, do you have a cup of blood, when they asked for a Band-Aid? Because it was like they put a Band-Aid on everything. Do you have a cup of blood? Because Band-Aids are for a cup of blood. Not yet. I said, okay, well, come back when you have a cup of blood and I will get you a Band-Aid. That was mean. I'm a bad mom.
And there's reality, especially I have children who like, can I just have Band-Aids? And I'm like,
Yes.
like, no. Yeah. So, I mean, we got to cut them off at some point.
Right. You go in the room, they're stuck to the walls and the doors and on the carpet, like it was craziness. So yeah. But at one time, my daughter actually did hurt herself pretty bad, where she cut through an artery and skating and landed on a piece of metal when she fell. And when she came in, Mom, is this a cup? Yep. Let's get in the car. That's a cup.
Those moments, I swear.
I love it.
Those moments are vital too as parents. It's like, I have enough body wisdom and I can feel when things are an emergency. Like, what a superpower to have. Because I've had a child who climbed before she walked, before she crawled. And it's like, there were a lot of cracks on the ground. We heard a lot of noggin cracks. And there were a handful that it was like, oh my gosh, is this an emergency? And I was like, yeah, this is an emergency. This is a concussion. This is a this or that, and it's, as a parent, to be able to have that moment of like understanding like what's going on, being cortically connected and being able to stay present within ourselves instead of just going into this like a really hard emotional response. It's so easy with our kids. We could save, I'm sure a lot of parents could save a lot of money going to the emergency room if they honed in those skills and they knew, they had a better cortical connection for it.
100%. I think that the tools we give our children today are amazing. We're kind of, we want to put our kids in a bubble, right? We want to protect them. So we become those helicopter parents and we make sure like nothing's in the way that's going to harm them. But at some point, it's life. They're going to get harmed. So why not just teach them the skills? Like when they fall, teach them a skill, like how to process that, deal with that. I would love to know how you work with children.
I mean, kids are great to work with. Yeah. Adults are fun because, you get them on the table and they think they can hide from you and they can like tell you as many stories as you want to maybe hear that, the stories they make up. And it's like, then you touch their body and they're like, I know exactly what's going on. Kids are great because they don't have any of that stuff. It's not there yet. So my second pregnancy, I was entrained through my entire pregnancy. And so there was so much expansion and like, my body felt so comfortable. And then birth came and I was entrained through my entire birth. And the entrainment is the work that we do here on the table. And just watching them grow and be connected and embodying their body. And it's just, they show up. Like kids are incredible because they show up. And so kids are they're easy to work with. They're absolutely, you're like, hey, get breath here, get connected here. They do it. And their system spontaneously reorganizes. And it shifts and it changes, and it's just like, it's just magic. Watching like a 2-week-old follow my contact and watch her little like sacrum work in oscillation. She finds 2 gateways in there, these 2 contacts I make, and she's breathing and you can see it moving. And that's at 2 weeks old. It blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, she gets it. She's brand new.
I had a lot of doubt about holistic medicine. I've only gotten into holistic side of living like 9 years ago, almost 10. And the whole reason I did, because no matter what an adult would tell me, you're always skeptical of an adult, right? Are they trying to sell to you? Maybe it worked for them. Maybe they didn't have what you had. But when I seen holistic medicine work on a 6-week-old, and they can't fake their reaction, right? They're 6 weeks old. And they used, I think it was an essential oil they used for colic, and they rubbed it on this baby who was my grandson, who was screaming nonstop for days because of colic. And they rub it on his tummy, and you just watch his little arms relax, his legs drop, and the peace come over him. Like, how does he fake that? What was that? And then that opened my mind to, wow, what else is there? Is this something new? Here's the thing. It wasn't new. It'd been around for a really long time. How come we didn't know about it?
Yeah, breath work is the oldest form of healing. I mean, our bodies are incredible gateways for an extraordinary life. And the capacity to understand that and to know that it's not just this, but it's like the body-mind connection the body mind processing. You know, our biology reflects our biography. We have ups, we have downs. We're in areas and moments of safety, and we're in moments of growth and expansion and joy and love, and we're also in moments of defense. And those moments of defense will ultimately, if you don't have skills to deal with what's happening, neurologically, we just tuck it away. We're like, we're going to put that in the bank for later. And that could be that could be an issue where it's a habitual stuff. It could be something that just happened once. It could be a myriad of combinations. But if you don't feel safe and you're in defense in some way, shape, or form, and we don't know how to deal with it, we're just going to load it in our body. And so that loading, you know, creates chronic muscle tension. And we can see that in people's physiology, you know, and we can see that as people walk around, it's like their shoulders are up to their ears and they're like hunched over, and you're like, man, like that looks like it hurts, you know? And so, you know, being able to work with children first to, you know, get them connected into their bodies and understand like what it means to breathe and find parts of themselves. Just like, yeah.
You know, I had 4 children and I never had one pain medication because of breathing. And honestly, I wasn't trained. It just came naturally. Like, and I noticed my granddaughter fell on her roller skates and cut her knee, and she's 5, and she's just turning 5 on the 17th, but it was weird to watch her even calm herself by going, oh, I have to breathe. And calming herself without anyone telling us. So instinctually, we already know, our body knows what we need to do. But when we get in panic mode or you know, we just automatically think, what do I do? What do I do? And we start holding our breath. And it's like craziness what we start creating. We create a horrible environment for us to get through that process or to even think about what's going on. So I love watching her do it. And I love watching that women know, they just know what to do when they're delivering. No one's teaching them. Like, we've been doing it since the beginning of time and no one's teaching them. I know we take classes and things like that, but basically they're teaching us to do what our body already knows to do.
Absolutely. And your granddaughter, she's probably seeing you do the same thing. So we're just modeling this for our children. Yes, they know, but they also are looking to us. Like, there's an emergency, there's a situation, there's a fall, there's a bump, there's a bruise, you know, what are they looking at first? They're looking at mom and dad to be like, what is it? Like, give me the cues as to what's actually happening. You know, and if as adults, we can just be like, ooh, that was a hard fall. You know, take a second. You know, are we bleeding? Are we okay? Is it an emergency? Let's get some breath in there. Let's keep our heads level about it. You know, our children are watching us.
Seriously. Remember when they start walking and they fall and what do you do? Oh, yay, get up. Like, because they look right at you like, am I hurt? What happened? And they get up and giggle, right? Because they took their cues from watching us, like react. If we didn't run over, oh my gosh, are you okay? Then they'd probably cry.
But, you know, they're beautiful little reflections, right? You know, their tantrum is probably your tantrum. And peaceful play is probably your peaceful play. So what beautiful opportunities these little tiny teachers in our life.
I love it. Melissa, I think you're fascinating. I just love everything that you shared with us. How can people find you?
I am in Northern California. I have a studio in Auburn, California. I am on the web at www.mlmoonstudio.com, Instagram, mlmoon_studio, Facebook, ML Moon Studio. So some iteration of ML Moon Studio. You can find me there. And yeah, I do mostly my work is at this moment in the studio, hands-on. That's where the gold is in being able to train people and get them connected in their bodies and watch this beautiful thing open up.
I love it. Melissa, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I thought it was so fascinating and I loved every minute of it. We're going to put all of Melissa's links in the show notes. So if you didn't catch it, they will be there. I would definitely recommend you visiting her sites. And if you're close to Northern California, hook up with her and see how you can start like thriving in your beautiful life. Life's too beautiful to miss one moment because you're in pain or not comfortable or something's wrong. So like, don't miss your life. You only get this one once. Thank you, Melissa.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.